Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Brenna Shafazada and I'm here with 350. Today we have a program on electrification projects that you could do at home. So our program is called Ring in the New Year with an Electrification Project. We're going to talk a little bit about EVs and heat pump water heating and electric lawn care. So I hope that something strikes your fancy. Before we get started, I do have some announcements to make. I wanted to share some good news. The city of Antioch, last week they put forward a no drilling ban in the city. So congratulations to Antioch. We're also hoping to see something similar in Contra Costa. So Contra Costa, the Sunflower Alliance is has a petition that they've started, and they have a good number of signatures, but they are looking for more. So if that's something that interests you, please sign this petition. We're going to go ahead and put it in the chat, and you could do that today. Later this week, there's also another event from the Green Sofa Cinema Series. This is a fun event to attend. Everybody watches a movie, something related to climate, and then they get together and chat about the movie. So the movie that they are going to be watching is Public Trust, The Fight for America's Public Lands, and the event for that is on Wednesday the 19th. We're also going to put a link to sign up for that in the chat if you'd like to attend. It's free, it's fun. And then so we have something you can do today, this week, and then next month for February. Our next event is going to be about the expansion at the Oakland Airport, and that is called Fight or Flight, the Climate Justice Impacts of Air Travel and the Oakland Airport Expansion Plan on February 13th, also free. If that's something that interests you, or if it's something that maybe you don't know a lot about but would like to know more, please come and attend. Everybody is welcome. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get started on today's event. And today we have Wei-Tai monitoring for us. Wei-Tai Kwok is an executive in the solar and storage industry, and he also does a lot of volunteer work in climate groups such as Sustainable Lafayette and Climate Reality. And we're really grateful today for your time and your help in doing this. And he's going to be one of our presenters too. So Wei-Tai, go ahead and.
All right. Thank you, Brenna. And Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to ring in the new year so quickly. Leave it to 350 to get us going. It's so nice to see many friendly faces here. Let me cut over and share my screen and maybe start with just, we're going to have two speakers joining me on some topics that are of great interest. And let me just say that to offer up two slides to just frame where I think we're at and why this is a great topic to be working on. And that is the challenge that we face, the 1.5 degrees centigrade challenge. How do we cut fossil fuels to zero by 2040? If we look backwards in time at where our carbon dioxide emissions come from, they're principally from fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. And if we look backwards, that's how we built it all up. But if we look forwards of how we're going to limit global warming to 1.5, we really have very steep curves to get down to either a 2055 or 2040 limit. That's, in just very brief period of time, we have to try to go to zero awfully quickly. That's daunting. I think all of us on this call know that. So what can we do then that will address at least the red and the blue areas of this chart and get us to eliminate gas and oil? Well, today we're going to talk about changing over natural gas, water heaters to heat pump electric, and we'll be talking about how gasoline and oil can be replaced by EVs and electric lawn equipment. And so I think that these are wonderful practical ways that 350 Contra Costa is helping us to focus on what we can do as individuals, both in our homes, but hopefully by doing this and learning this, we can find ways that as policy influencers, we can also influence our policymakers to make these changes themselves as well. So our first speaker to get us going, we have James Leach today and Dan Mabe, who will be joining us from Southern California. James is joining us from the coast. Maybe he can talk to us about the tsunami warning as well from where he's at. But James is an old friend of mine from Lafayette days. We served on Sustainable Lafayette board, and he's the author of a beautiful gem of a book called The Sustainable Way, which he was motivated to write because he wanted, as a writer, to figure out a way how to communicate simple ways or straightforward ways to understand the importance of the climate crisis, but moreover what we could do. And I'm so impressed by his years of work in trying to continue to find solutions, as in part as getting trained by Al Gore as a climate reality leader, and volunteering as a presentations co-chair for Climate Reality Project, and also spending a lot of time talking and writing about electric vehicles. And so that's what he's going to do for us today. Without further ado, let me turn it over to James Leach. Jim.
Thank you, Wei-Tai. Let me share my screen and we'll get on with the presentation. Okay, good. Well, it feels like there's an awful lot going on with electrified transportation these days. You look around, all the manufacturers, the major automotive manufacturers have suddenly jumped into the fray, and they all look to be producing a lot or getting ready to produce a lot of electric vehicles. What's all the excitement about? It's really about Tesla. Tesla demonstrated that if you build a car that performs well and it's a car that people really want to drive and you give them enough charging infrastructure, they'll buy them. And they've been rewarded with an incredible market capitalization. This headline is from a year ago. The only thing that's really changed since then is that today Tesla's market capitalization is larger than the 10 largest automotive manufacturers combined. So these manufacturers are chasing the money and trying to catch up with Tesla. We're seeing really encouraging signs with commercial vehicles coming from Ford. Ram recently announced they're going to have one in about a year. General Motors is delivering a fleet of vehicles to FedEx, and we've got UPS and Amazon, and even the US Postal Service is going to have some electric vehicles, and maybe all of them will be electric. We'll see. We've got exciting cars coming from companies like BMW. Here's a gorgeous car from Kia that I'm really impressed with. That'll be out really soon. Mercedes has got a luxury sedan. Of course, Ford's got two vehicles, Mach-E that came out last year, and the F-150 Lightning that's about to be introduced very soon. Here's the VW that was introduced this last year. And even Harley-Davidson is in on this. So there's a lot of excitement. But don't get too excited because we have a long way to go. Battery electric vehicles, and I'm talking about vehicles that are purely battery electric, they represent less than 0.5% of the total vehicle registrations in the United States. Sales of battery electric vehicles actually declined in 2019 and 2020. Then last year, they doubled to nearly 2.9% of total vehicles sold in the United States. Now here in California, if you look at the trend over the last 10 years, our greenhouse gas emissions from on-road transportation is actually trending higher. And this is in spite of the fact that we have a large number of electric vehicles and very high mileage hybrids and plug-in hybrids. So we've got a lot of work to do. And what's happened there is that we're seeing larger and larger vehicles on the roads and people driving greater distances with urban sprawl. Also in the United States this last year, the average vehicle mileage actually went down. It's now at 24.9 miles per gallon average in the United States. So what are the barriers? Well, we've had the vested interests that have been there all along. But there's also a lot of public acceptance issues. High perceived cost of battery electric vehicles, range anxiety, and there's a lot of people that live in internal combustion engine lifestyle and culture, the hot rodders and other people that are into off-roading and so forth. And of course, there's a political polarization and identity issues. You know, in some parts of the country, people are reluctant to switch to an electric vehicle because it's like changing sides. Well, I'm going to be focusing on the higher perceived cost and the range anxiety issues in this presentation. Let's talk about the financial incentives just for a minute. Last year, the average vehicle in the United States sold for $41,000, and battery electric vehicles are clearly more expensive. Keep in mind that this is not an apples to apples comparison. If you took like utility and performance vehicles and compared them, you'd find that the gap is really much less. And however, it is true that electric vehicles do cost more to produce, and manufacturers are expecting that they'll reach parity later in this decade. But nonetheless, they cost more to produce. Now, currently, we have a federal tax credit available to those people who buy vehicles from manufacturers who have produced less than 200,000 electric vehicles. So last year, we bought a Ford Mach-E. And so this next tax return will claim a $7,500 tax credit on our tax return. The proposed Build Back Better bill, which may or may not happen, it has some changes in it. It eliminates the 2,000 production limit. So that will allow Tesla buyers to also, again, get the $7,500 credit. They've also added a $4,500 credit if the vehicle is manufactured in a union assembly plant in the United States, an additional $500 if the battery is made in the US. California has a purchase rebate of $2,000. And there are local incentives which can add up to as much as $6,000. I live in Monterey County in Pacific Grove. So I'll be receiving the federal tax credit. I've already received a check from the state of California. I received a $2,000 check from our local Central Coast Community Energy. And there are also incentives available here in the county to encourage low-income people to electrify their transportation and to install chargers in their homes. So you have to check with your local situation, even credits from PG&E. Let's talk a little bit about maintenance cost. There's a study that came out recently by the federal government of their fleet of vehicles. They report that it costs 10 cents a mile to maintain an internal combustion vehicle engine or a vehicle. So in 120,000 miles, you're going to spend about $12,000 on maintenance. They found that their battery electric vehicles are about 40% less, about 6 cents a mile. So they're looking at a savings of nearly $5,000 in the 120,000 mile life of a typical vehicle in the federal fleet. There's differences in expected life. You know, the internal combustion vehicles in the United States are pretty much engineered to last 200,000 miles, although they seldom do. If they're properly maintained, driven properly, they'll often last that long. But we actually experience less than that. 150,000 miles is about the maximum or the average these days. But electric vehicles are expected to have over a 300,000 mile life. So it's a 50% longer useful life for an electric vehicle. Then there's energy cost. Here I'm using the average price of gas over the last year in the United States for a vehicle that gets 25 miles per gallon. And you can see that you'd spend $15,684 over the 120,000 mile time span. The same battery electric vehicle, again, based on the United States average price for electricity, you'd save $11,500 nearly on fuel cost. Now here in California, we pay a little more for gas, but we also pay more for electricity. But the net of it is we actually benefit more than people in the rest of the country because of using electric vehicles. These are the three reasons: maintenance costs, expected life, and energy costs. These are the reasons why fleets are switching to electric vehicles. Purely financial. Now, there are a lot of other electric vehicle benefits. And I know many of you are aware of these, but let's go over them very quickly. First of all, who likes visiting gas stations? I can't tell you how much I appreciate never having to go to a gas station again or a repair shop. I'm sure I will at some point, but I haven't yet. And I've had electric vehicles now for 4 years. The fact that I'm not generating any pollution for myself or the people near me, that's a big benefit. No fumes, no oil spots in the parking areas. And with battery electric vehicles, idling is no problem, as they say. Smooth, silent power and the low center of gravity of these vehicles make them a lot of fun to drive. There's no warm up. You just get in and drive. The heater works right away and off you go. Of course, our cost for energy is stable, relatively stable compared to gasoline. And this is one I care about a lot because I want to reduce my greenhouse gas emissions. And just for a minute, I'll explain where this comes from. The average US vehicle gets 25 miles per gallon in the United States. And every gallon of gas that's burned releases about 25 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. And that comes from two sources. There's about 20 pounds that comes directly from burning the fuel. And there's another 5 pounds that comes from upstream emissions from producing and distributing the fuel for us to use. So that means the average vehicle in the United States that gets 25 miles per gallon releases 1 pound of CO2 for every mile it's driven. And so, of course, if you had a vehicle that got 50 miles per gallon, it'd be half of that, or half a pound per mile. Now, an electric vehicle that's charged on the grid in the United States also produces some CO2 because some of our electricity is generated from fossil fuels. But as you can see, it's far less per mile. And of course, we charge our vehicles from renewable sources, which I do here at my home, and release zero CO2. Let's talk a little bit about vehicle range and efficiency. Overall efficiency of the vehicle, I'm going to express in this presentation as miles per kilowatt hour. That is how far a vehicle can go on a kilowatt hour of energy. Let's talk about internal combustion vehicles just for a moment. Again, we're using that 25 miles per gallon average vehicle. If you look at the energy content in a gallon of gasoline, when you burn it, it releases the equivalent of 33.4 kilowatt hours of energy. And that means an internal combustion vehicle that gets 25 miles per gallon, it can travel only 3/4 of a mile on each kilowatt hour that it releases into the atmosphere or that it releases when you burn the gasoline. Compare that to an electric vehicle. Here I'll use the Chevrolet Bolt. You see two mileage ratings here. One is the EPA rating, and the other is the Edmunds rating. Edmunds uses more of an urban driving route, so their numbers are a little different. But the Bolt has a 65 kilowatt hour battery, which gives it a better than a 4 mile per kilowatt hour rating, which means it's better, more than 5 times more efficient than that electric, that gasoline powered vehicle. This is important to grasp because this explains why electric vehicles are so viable. It makes using batteries possible, this high efficiency. And also it explains why we really don't need as much electricity as you might think to switch our entire vehicle fleet to electricity. The Tesla has similar efficiency, a little bit better on the low end, 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour. And the Ford Mach-E, close to the same, topping out at between 3.5 and 3.5 miles. Then there's the Aptera. It's got a 1,000 mile range with a 100 kilowatt hour battery. It gets 10 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, of course, it comes with some compromises. 3 wheels and 2 seats. You can buy it in a variety of options, starting with a 30 kilowatt hour battery pack for 300 miles up to a 1,000 mile range. It's very fast. It has enough solar power, solar panels built into the skin of the vehicle to provide 40 miles per day of solar charging just by parking it outside. It's currently going through its final testing, and we would expect, I expect to see these on our roads here in California and around the entire United States and even in Europe a little bit later this year. Last I heard, they've got 30,000 paid reservations. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. Let's talk about chargers. You're probably already familiar with the AC power supplies that people use to charge their electric vehicles in their garages. And they come in, 120 volt versions that plug in the standard outlet and also 240 volt versions. Let's talk about fast chargers. Now, fast chargers are different in that they provide direct current directly to the vehicle instead of alternating current. The level 1 and level 2 chargers use a rectifier built into the vehicle to convert the alternating current to direct current. Fast chargers come in a range of powers ranging from 50 kilowatt hours to about 350 kilowatt hours. Now let's take a typical road trip recharging session. When you're on a road trip and you've traveled for 2.5 hours, going on 3 hours, you probably need a break. So let's assume we're going to pull over and recharge 45 kilowatt hours, which is equivalent to 180 miles for a typical 4 mile per kilowatt hour battery electric vehicles. Using a 50 kilowatt hour charger, it'll take 54 minutes to provide that 180 miles. And this would be the limit that you'd experience in a Chevrolet Bolt with the fast charger option, because it has a limit of 50 kilowatt hours that it can receive. For charging with 150 kilowatts, it'll take 18 minutes. Now, this is the limit of the Mustang Mach-E. If I plugged a Chevrolet Bolt into a charger that's capable of 150 kilowatts, it will still limit it to its 50 kilowatt limit. But as you can see, this dramatically shortens the time it takes to get a quick recharge. That's barely enough time to go in and get a cup of coffee at Starbucks and take a break and check your email. And if you're using a 350 kilowatt charger, it only takes 7 minutes. So what we're seeing with fast charging is that it's starting to approach the amount of time it takes to refuel a car, a gasoline-powered car. Fast charging is going to make a tremendous difference in dealing with range anxiety. Here's the Electrify America fast charging stations. They've also done a good job of integrating, making the user experience smooth. When I plug in my Mach-E into their chargers, it automatically recognizes my car. It knows who I am, and it charges to my account. I just plug it in and walk away. It starts charging. And while it's charging, I can check the status of it. It notifies me when it's approaching my limit or my goal. And then come back and off I go. There are also a lot of good online tools, or I should say mobile phone tools for alleviating range anxiety. There are several that allow you to look at all the chargers that are in your area. So here's one that shows all available chargers where I live in Pacific Grove. Use the color code scheme to differentiate between level 2 and fast chargers and which ones are available and which ones aren't. Here's the Electrify America screen that shows the chargers available in my area. If I click on the one in Pacific Grove, it'll show me the status of the charger, how much power it can provide, and when it was last used. And they also come with integrated trip planners in the navigation systems. So this I can drive either from the navigation system in the car or from my cell phone, which is integrated with the car. And yesterday I produced this example. I just told it that I wanted to travel to Sacramento. And it knew that I only had a 68% charge at the time, so it suggested that I stop at the Electrify America station in Livermore for a quick 12-minute charge on my way to Sacramento. Now, of course, we all realize that most of the battery electric vehicles will be charged where they are parked for a long period of time. And that's at home and at work. In fact, in my case, because I have enough range to travel to the Lafayette area where I have family, I can travel there and back without recharging. So almost all of our charging is here at home. We're also seeing level 2 and level 3 charging stations at shopping centers, restaurants. And that's because these businesses, of course, want to attract the people that have these cars. And we're seeing more and more fast chargers at road trip rest stop intervals along all of our major highways. But a factor that is important to recognize is that fast chargers and longer vehicle range is making battery electric vehicles far more practical for high density living where private chargers are not available. Now, most people don't have a 100-mile commute. If you've got a 20 or 30 or 40-mile commute, you don't need to charge every day. In fact, it's very common for electric vehicles to be charged only once a week. Now, in our case, we charge our vehicle everywhere from 7 to 10 days. So you can imagine if you're living in an apartment building and you don't have a charger available, you can always stop for a quick fast charge along the way. Be ready for the next day's trip. Let's take a look at how many charging stations we might need. And we'll start with a comparison of how many light-duty gasoline-powered cars there are in California. There are 28 million. We have 10,500 retail fuel stations. This comes out to a ratio of 1,400 vehicles per retail fuel station. Now, Tesla has demonstrated how many fast charging stations their customers need in order to be satisfied with their network. So let's use their numbers for here in California to compare. They have 381,000 vehicles in California. That's as of the end of Q3 last year, 2021. And they have 252 supercharger stations. Now it's interesting that the ratio of vehicles to location in Tesla's case is almost the same as it is for gasoline-powered cars in California, comparing that population with retail fuel stations. This doesn't tell us how many actual individual chargers there are, however. So if you look at the average of 9 fast chargers per Tesla location, it means they have 2,268 individual chargers available for their population of vehicles, which means there are 168 vehicles for each charger in the Tesla fast charging network. Now let's compare that to the non-Tesla battery electric vehicle population in California, 233,000 vehicles, and 3,879 currently available fast charging stations. That means there are 60 vehicles per charger station. In other words, the non-Tesla electric vehicle population actually has a more desirable ratio of fast chargers than does Tesla. And my observations have confirmed this. When I go on trips, out of curiosity, I often look for how many fast chargers there are and where they are, and I sometimes stop to look at them. And there are quite a few of them, and they're often not used. And the other factor is that Tesla is expected to open up their charging network to other makes. It's supposed to happen this year. So if we use the Tesla ratio and apply that to the whole country, it would mean that we would require about 200,000 fast charging stations across the United States to provide good coverage for fast chargers. And by the way, we have 150,000 retail gasoline fuel stations in the United States. So this is a number that's not much different from the number of gas stations that we have across the country. The 2021 infrastructure bill includes $7.5 million for EV charging, and that's been advertised as providing 500,000 new charging stations. And since that equals $15,000 per station, it isn't clear what the mix is of level 2 and fast chargers. Will be interesting to see how that comes out. The other significant thing that's happening is that there's a new coalition of 50 major utilities are putting together a coast-to-coast network of their electric chargers. So we should see that activity starting this year. Here's an interesting product. ZipCharge is out of Europe, but there are other companies making similar products elsewhere. And what it is, it's a portable charger. And the way it works, you plug it in at the house or at work, and you charge it up. It's a portable battery. And if you don't have access to a charger at your home or your office, you just wheel it out and plug it in. Charge your car. This particular model here is their 20-mile version, provides 20 miles of charge for the ID4 that it's connected to. And they have a larger version that provides 40 miles. So this is useful in places where you don't have access to a charger and you don't have a real long commute each day. Gives you a way to charge up your car. And by the way, it locks to the vehicle. The two plugs lock, and you can't operate it unless you have authorization. So it's not likely to be stolen. And of course, we're now seeing service vehicles that will have the ability to charge vehicles that in the event that someone runs their battery dead on a trip. This is a Ford Lightning, and you can see it's plugged in and charging that Mustang Mach-E. You've probably seen ads on television where Ford is showing their pickup truck electrifying the house. And here's an interesting development. The Volkswagen Group, which includes Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche, they're delivering a number of different charging options. And the one that gets my attention is their DC wall box. And they're starting to market this in Europe. And what it is, it's a bidirectional charging, which means that you can charge your vehicle and you can also use it to draw from the vehicle to supply power to your house in the case of a power failure. And I think this will be very popular. Ford is also about to introduce the same capability with their version of this here in the United States. And I think we'll see this coming from all the different vehicle manufacturers. So what to expect in the coming year? I'm running close on time here, so I'll be very brief. We can expect to see sales continuing to rise, especially in regions that have good infrastructure and a lot of battery electric vehicle users, because people do pick up on conversations with other people who use electric vehicles and convinces them to buy one. We'll see rapid build out of the DC fast charging stations. Companies like Electrify America, they're really installing at a rapid rate. And we'll continue to see a lot of battery electric vehicle model announcements from the traditional auto manufacturers. Now, keep in mind that their first goal is to hype their stock price while they can scramble to produce these vehicles. But secondly, they want to freeze the early adopter population of buyers or prospects from buying competing products. And we can expect those same traditional manufacturers to continue to aggressively promote their very profitable gas guzzling vehicles to the majority of Americans who remain resistant to battery electric vehicles. And we'll also see increased efforts to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt from the fossil fuel interests and the internal combustion vehicle biased media and individuals. They'll talk about issues such as reliance on foreign sources and the availability of lithium and cobalt, rare earth metals. So what I'm listing here are topics that if you are supportive of electric vehicles, you need to become aware of how to answer questions about these claims. Another one is battery electric fire risks. They'll try to raise that as an issue to create fear of having an electric vehicle. They'll talk about the impact of mineral mining and manufacturing and disposal of batteries. They typically won't talk about how they're actually now already being recycled. They'll talk about the fear of being stranded, like 2 weeks ago in a snowstorm. We'll talk about not having enough electricity or a grid that's capable of providing the charging. And they'll talk about impending breakthroughs in affordable hydrogen, anything to cause delay, whatever it takes. So it's time to drive electric. And thank you for your interest and attention.
All right. Thank you, James. And this is the book that you wrote that I was talking about. Yay. Big round of applause for James. And while we get Dan ready to present, let me just say the format of what we're doing today is we're going to have each of the three presenters present for about 20 minutes. And then at the end, we'll take all the questions live at the end. But if you'd like to type questions in the chat now, please feel free to do so. And James and the other will respond in the chat to any questions you may have. So feel free to type your questions or reserve them for the end of the program. But now I'd like to introduce Dan Mabe, who joins us from Southern California, where he is the founder and president of an organization called the American Green Zone Alliance, where he's been focusing on the electrification of lawn care equipment. This is a topic that I know many of us are really interested in, and it's great to have such an expert with over a decade of practical experience to share his views with us today. So Dan, please take it away.
Thank you very much. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me, I'm still, like I said,
Go into slideshow. You looking good.
yeah, okay. For some reason, it's not going into slideshow, so let me.
Go click that resume slide show, which was right under there. I think, go ahead and try to share your screen again.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and get this back to where it's supposed to be. I apologize.
There it is.
No worries. Yep, go on.
Okay.
Backspace it or up arrow.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone, and a pleasure to be here. Dan Mabe with the American Green Zone Alliance. And since I know that we're always pressed for time on these things, I'm going to go right into the presentation. Okay, the American Green Zone Alliance, otherwise known as AGZA. We are a leader in low impact grounds maintenance strategies. Our mission is to prudently transition the grounds maintenance industry to a more quieter, more sustainable practice. Applications are commercial crews who service municipalities, schools, and residential properties, but it also includes people who do their own properties. Before I move forward, a quick background on myself. I actually come from the industry. I worked in the industry as a young kid with the man of the house. I owned my own gas business, and in the mid-2000s, I decided to go in a different direction and started an all-electric business even before lithium powered tools existed. So what got us here? I would say the gas leaf blower is really the catalyst to start all this. There are over 200 bans, restrictions, ordinances across the country, and there's now obviously state regulation that has passed recently here in California and being proposed in several other states. Coming from the gas industry myself, here are AGZA's top 10 impacts of gas operations. We do put noise at the top and in the center because noise is the most noticeable thing, and noise pollution is real, and it's physical and it's damaging. But also, of course, we understand the emissions. In fact, AGZA has developed a software to measure impacts from this industry, which I'll demonstrate in a few more slides, the health risks to the workers and surrounding communities. And if you look at the lower left, lesser known is the toxic and solid waste component from maintaining small gas engines cradle to grave. Of course, using these tools, gas tools, it's a lot of vibration, very hard on the workers, and the maintenance requirements are so much more than their electric counterparts. They are more expensive over time than their electric counterparts. Here's an example, just to hit it home. We're out there in the field, boots on the ground, if you will, and we're really understanding what impacts this equipment has primarily on the workers. Okay, here's our gas contenders right here. Woo! All right, we got power trim. Looks like we have, smoke coming out of the back of the blower there. Okay, so yes, of course it's the noise, but when you look at the workforce, they're really not going to wear anything to help protect them from the exposures of this exhaust. And I'm hard pressed to find any one of these workers wearing proper hearing protection. So we'll just focus on noise for a few slides. This is all of us inside or outside of our homes. When the gas crews come, this is what that noise profile looks like. We all know what it smells like to get a good whiff of two-stroke exhaust when the machinery is being operated around us. This is what it would look like, that noise profile, if these tools were being used electric. And then of course there's zero emission, so there is no exhaust with the electric fleets. Here's an example of the noise benefit. To keep in mind, gas tools operate at low frequencies. That means the noise travels long distances, penetrates barriers very easily. Electric tools are going to operate at higher frequencies. We use the mosquito analogy. When it's right next to your ear, you can hear it loud, but as you distance from it or it distances from you, that noise profile is going to drop off significantly. Here is an industrial professional mower. It's a 74-inch riding mower. It actually has a 28 kilowatt hour battery, and it will produce 7 to 8 hours of runtime on one charge under load. But check out how quiet it is compared to their gas counterparts. This happens to be utilized at our largest green zone to date. It's an entire school district that has been converted under our program. So just to touch on really quick, that solid and toxic waste component. Growing up most of my life in Southern California, being from the industry in Southern California, we know that one worker could account for 50 pieces of solid and toxic waste component that ends up in landfills just from operating gas tools. The workers. Here's a city in Southern California. Of course, we will never impugn anybody, but they really tout themselves as probably the most sustainable city in the world. And yet their crews and their people come to AGSA constantly asking for help. And we are very surprised that the city has not converted their operations yet, and their workers continue to be exposed. We do address environmental justice components for the workforce of this industry that I come from. Solutions. This is an example of institutional AGSA certified green zoning. This is where we convert entire cities, universities, school districts, private properties. It's the city of South Pasadena. Just a quick look at how we did it. They were the first full AGSA green zone city. The AGSA green zone standard is all operations are done with battery electric and people powered methods for routine maintenance. Workloads that are not workload feasible with electric tools are exempt. Here's how we did it. We started with one of their popular parks, Garfield Park. We worked with their public works and their vendor. This is all data driven. We converted this park, took the data, and then brought it to mayor, city council, city manager, and they really were so impressed with the cost of operation benefits and how this went that they decided to AGSA Green Zone certify their entire city. In this city, when you visit South Pasadena, at least on city properties, you will not have to suffer with any gas equipment being used for all tools. Of course, it was a big deal. Mayor, city council, we had members of Congress and even members of our California State Senate who were instrumental in helping with the funding mechanism for portion of Assembly Bill 1346 that just passed. We've done entire golf courses. For this course, we were able to lower the carbon out of their operations by 70% and lower that noise profile 40 to 70%. It's important that we don't demonize the workforce of this industry that I come from. A lot of people will think, oh, the industry and the workers. Well, it's also the property owners that need to be educated as well, all of us together. And this is where we get the biggest bang for our buck. AGSA has created a behavior modification model. We have embraced the workers, made them stakeholders. We empower them with information. We are out there, again, boots on the ground. We do not embellish on the electric equipment. We tell the truth about its performance levels, and we try to help them take a different approach and adjust to the electric technology, because it's not just, let's put electric tools in people's hands and call it a day. It's much more complex than that. And this industry has many layers and complexities to it. Here's an example of a company that we helped train and convert, and you'll get a sample of how quiet this operation is as well. Okay, we're here with Noel, our new clean air gardening warrior here at a HOA in Thousand Oaks, California. And he's just demonstrating how quiet his work is. Noel is from SunTech. We're doing a certification right now of their work, verifying that they are all electric, that they are charging the batteries of the tools they're using. As you can see, they're using a lot of ego. And we're documenting how unloud they are when they're providing their services. Till next time. Okay, what's important here as well is the best practices aspect. Because this HOA wanted this, we had to educate the HOA and say, look, do you need your lawns stripped and blown perfectly clean and hyper manicured? Can you allow them to use these electric tools and just do hardscape, blow the debris into the beds and allow it to act as natural mulch? There's a paradigm shift going on, and we need more of it in the way we think about how our landscapes should look after the service people visit. Here's an example of that hyper manicured landscaping look that I just described. This has been the standard for the past 4 decades, if you will. It's neat, it's manicured, but it's bland and it's boring to me. Here's an example of the opposite of that. This homeowner allows the leaves to be mulched. They used to be, again, with a gas leaf blower blown off perfectly for a carpeted green look. So we really do need to educate the property owner as well. We encourage people to take turf out and plant pollinator pathway type of gardens in our educational materials. And then the landscaper is basically conditioned to think that everybody wants this, and perhaps a lot of people do. A lot of us homeowners, we're busy, we're working even from home during COVID. A lot of us really don't know what we want, so we go with what the landscaper thinks that we want. So we're running around in circles. If you're going to do this yourself, here's a family. This is Jared. He came to one of our workshops and said, hey, how can I do this? How can I get my gardener to do this? And we said, communicate with the gardener as best you can. And I said, it might behoove you to buy dedicated tools for your home and then have the gardener access those tools. And then people, we've asked them to take their own call of action, create their own green zones at home. We have signs on our website. They are for sale, but we do not profit from these signs. It's completely break even. It's for people who want to demonstrate and signal to their neighborhood, I did this, you can do the same. So last slide here. What steps can homeowners and gardeners take together today? Well, we can stop or reduce the use of gas leaf blowers, mulch leaves with the mower, use rakes and brooms in selected areas, use electric blowers efficiently and judiciously. When we help facilitate these conversions, it's not use this electric blower versus this gas one. No, the electric blowers will never be as powerful as their gas counterparts. So they need to adopt different methods and different approaches to help mitigate all leaf blower use. Homeowners, we do consider, even with the price of gas now, and if someone's going to make an investment in the higher cost of that electric equipment, consider paying your gardeners more to go electric. And then gardeners, when we do these symposiums, sometimes there are gardeners present. We always ask them to consider how important they are to us and in our communities, and how they can control a lot of our quality of life. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Big round of applause for Dan. And I know we've got people with questions in the chat, so I'll encourage people to ask you questions, maybe what cities have the appropriate leaf blower bans and how they're framed and so forth. But we really appreciate your joining us today, Dan. All right, we're in the home stretch here, and we're going to shift gears again and change from cars to lawn equipment to our homes. And today I picked a topic, and I want to share with you my experience with heat pump water heaters. And the reason I picked this topic is because, believe it or not, maybe you can upgrade for almost free right now. Did I get your attention? You could actually get a free heat pump water heater. Well, maybe, and maybe almost. So you have to stick with me to hear out if you qualify. But let me go over some of these top questions of what is a water heater, the advantages, challenges, issues, and so forth. By starting off and just explain that when we ask and talk about what is a heat pump water heater, they are actually super energy efficient. When you compare them to gas water heaters on the left, which are 67 to 73% efficient. Mine was only 59 or 56%. Standard electric ones in the middle are about 95% efficient, but the ones that are on the right, those heat pump, they're 200 to 400% efficient. They all look about the same, as you can see. And let me share this video to show actually how they work.
Heat pump water heaters use the heat and humidity from room air to heat water stored in an insulated tank, making them much more efficient than standard electric water heaters. A fan pulls room air across an evaporator coil, transferring heat from the air into refrigerant in the coil. The heat turns the refrigerant into a vapor. A compressor compresses the vapor and pumps it through condenser coils that are wrapped around the tank. After transferring heat to the water in the tank, the refrigerant turns back into a liquid and the process repeats. Like standard electric water heaters, the heat pump has upper and lower heating elements that operate automatically when the room is too cold for the heat pump to work efficiently, or when there's a larger than normal demand. Since heat pump water heaters produce condensation, a condensation drainage system is needed. In some cases, a condensation pump is used to remove condensate.
All right. Well, that was a description of a heat pump, of something actually called a hybrid heat pump, because this is an important distinction, that this hybrid includes an additional radiant element inside of it that he was showing you. And what he showed you on the top, that black thing on the top, is the heat pump, which runs at 200 to 400% efficiency. And embedded in the middle, the upper element or lower element, those elements is the radiant element. It's like the old-fashioned cooktops with radiant elements, and those actually can heat the water faster, but only at 95, 100% efficiency, but faster. Okay, so that's the word when they mention hybrid. Like these new appliances actually can be serviced by an app or controlled by an app. And I wanted to show you an example here. And the way that these apps work typically can control 4 different operating modes. One is, the first one listed is the heat pump only mode. That's the highest energy efficiency. The second mode is that hybrid mode I was talking to you about, when it runs mostly in heat pump mode, but if you have like 8 guests over and they're all showering one after another and you need to recharge the hot water really quickly, it can use the radiant element. The third mode is electric only. I don't know why anybody would only do that, but I guess it can do that. And finally, the vacation mode, when you're away. But the most energy efficient mode would be to keep it in that heat pump only mode. All of that can be controlled by an app. Now, heat pumps come in different form factors. The one on the left is the one we're typically used to, and we call those single unit heat pumps. I happen to have the one on the right, which is a split unit where the tank is inside my house. It's 83 gallons, and the heat pump is outside the house, and that's within a 50-foot maximum. Mine is made by a Japanese company called Sanden. So that's the two different form factors you might come across. So what are the advantages of having done this? I like the fact that, of course, there are no more gas connections in my house, and so there's more no more carbon dioxide pollution we talked about earlier. But also, I don't need to have a carbon monoxide monitor monitoring, any times that gas might be released in my home. And there's also the benefit of costs. Here's an example I wanted to share with you to compare what is it like to replace your current one with a gas or an electric or a heat pump version. And I just use this as an example of the purchase. The first line is the purchase price plus installation. Typically for gas nowadays, about $1,500. It's cheaper for electric, $1,200, but heat pumps are around $5,000. So that's what scares many customers away. But rebates to the tune of, say, $2,000 or $300 really brings the price down. And actually, as I shared with you, I'm going to share with you how these rebates have actually increased to $3,000 or $4,000 from this $2,000 example I have here. But bear with me on the numbers I have on the screen. And let's talk about, so that's the purchase cost, but if you add your annual fuel cost, and this can be gleaned from that yellow sticker, which accompanies all of these purchases, this is an annual fuel cost average across America. And when you run the numbers, you'll see that in year one, the cheapest one to buy would be the middle one, the electric resistance. And across 5 years, the cheapest one to have had was the gas one on the left. But by year 10 and 15, the one that costs the least to run overall, your lowest life cycle costs, are the electric heat pump ones. And so since these products last easily 10 or about 15 years, these are the ones that are most cost effective. In my home, for example, I've had heat pump water heater for 2 years now. And after I was in it for 1 year, I had electrified my whole home. And you can see that actually my overall home costs were slightly less as an all electric home in year 5 compared to the 4 years previous. So some of these projections of energy efficiency did turn out to be exactly the case in my own very home. Now, there are challenges and issues that I ran into that I'd like you to be aware of. Let me run through a couple of them. One is that heat pump water heaters need a 240 volt outlet and a 30 amp breaker. So in addition to having a plumber, you may also need an electrician to install these, or a general contractor who's licensed to do both. You may need to check if there's enough room in your electrical panel to have a 240 volt 30 amp breaker in there. Older homes built 50, 60 years ago may not have that, and you may need a service panel upgrade, which can be $3,000 or $4,000 more. But the good news is that some new 120 volt units are coming online even this year and next year. So that may obviate the need for the 240 volt capacity. A second area of challenge to know about is that these generate cold air and they dehumidify. That's sometimes a benefit and sometimes an issue. So you need to put them in a room size that is at least 10 foot by 10 foot, 7 foot high ceiling, or you need to put them somewhere where the louver doors, because as we saw in the video, the heat pump is gathering its heat from the air surrounding it. Or you can use ducts and duct the air from outside in, or your attic in order to cool that air. So you may also need to run a condensate line or condensate pump. That was mentioned in the video, but what it means for those of us who have driven our car in the summer with our air conditioning on, and you park your car on your driveway, you'll see all this water dripping out from under your car. And that's simply the condensate that is condensing around the heat pump in your car. So you don't want that in your house, where you'll need to drain it out. And that's where the condensate line is needed. There's also an air filter that needs to be cleaned periodically. and the fact that these make a little bit of noise. It's louder than a gas water heater, similar to a refrigerator. One other issue I wanted to point out when I decided to find the properly sized heat pump was that a typical family of 4 on the left would have maybe a 50-gallon natural gas water heater. But if you go to a hybrid or heat pump electric, you might want to upsize that to maybe a 55 or 60-gallon, or in my case, I had, as I said, an 83-gallon tank, which is the highest efficiency, but the bigger size can compensate for the fact that it's a little slower to heat up that water. So this is one of the considerations for sizing your heat pump. Now, another question that comes up is, where do you install these heat pump water heaters? And some of the most common installations are, remember that I said the air source heat pump needs air, like a 7 by 10 by 10 room. And so a garage is actually a great place, especially in a temperate climate like California. I've seen many people's hot water heaters in their garages. But if they're inside your home, you need either like a louvered door situation or a ducted system. This picture on the right shows both, actually, those silver ducts going in and out. And it also shows a louvered door, but you only need actually one or the others. Some homes I've seen have their water heaters on a little hut outside their home, and in the Bay Area climate, that's okay. Up in Lake Tahoe, that'd be too cold, and that would not really work. So those are some ideas about areas of install. Now here's an area that's really exciting and new. I want to share with you about cost and incentives, because I want to dive down it a little bit so we can understand how you're going to get your free or almost free heat pump. And that is to know the cost of these heat pumps in the first place. I went to homedepot.com and looked up this common Rheem model, for example, and you can see that for 50, 65, or 80 gallons, the price, of course, increased $1,700, $2,100, or $2,200. And those are more expensive than their 50-gallon gas counterparts or 80-gallon gas counterparts. But in addition to the cost of the heat pump water heater itself, you of course have to install it with the labor and the electrical and the permitting and so forth. And so the plumber or contractor is going to quote you somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,000 to $6,000 to do this job. And that's probably compared to $1,500 or $2,000 or $2,500, which might be replacing a gas like for like. But the good thing about heat pumps today is that there are actually major incentives out there of somewhere between $3,100 to $6,000 per unit, and a federal tax credit of up to $300. For me, 2 years ago, I had access to nothing, just the federal tax credit, but not those incentives. And so the good thing today, for those of you who haven't done this yet, is it's actually a great time to look into heat pump water heaters. For those of you who are calling in from around the San Francisco Bay Area, an organization called BayREN is the entity that handles all of the rebates and incentives. They're the clearinghouse for Bay Area governments. The website at the bottom, bayren.org, I'll drop in the chat later. But I don't want you to necessarily look at each and every one of these programs, except to note that BayREN offers money that cities like Alameda or the county of Marin or Palo Alto or some of the community choice aggregators like Peninsula Clean Energy, everybody is, different groups are offering different amounts of incentives. And so it really varies, depends on where you live, as to how many incentives you could layer on top to get for yourself. So I'm actually just only going to point everybody to the bottom one here, which is a brand new incentive that just came out last fall by an organization called TEC. And that one is for all 9 Bay Area counties, excluding Palo Alto. And originally that was slated for a $1,000 rebate, which that's what it was introduced as. But in December, just a couple of weeks ago, I found that they bumped that up to $3,100 to $3,800. And so that is just fantastic, because I told you a new one is only $4,000 to $6,000, right? So this is on your path to getting an almost free heat pump water heater. It's through this new TEC program. And so this is the website that TEC, sort of managed by BayREN. This is the latest thing from just like right before Christmas, it was announced. If you have a gas to heat pump water heater under 55 gallons, you'll get $3,100 in rebates. If you have bigger than 55 gallons, like that 70 or 80 gallon, you can be eligible for $3,800. Now, if you are starting off with it, you already have an electric one and you want to go to heat pump electric, you can still get $1,500. And then if you need a panel upgrade, there's money up to $2,800 to do this. So this is a big chunk of money from the state of California that has now been made available to residents. So it's awesome news. I'll be putting some links in the chat of how you can find this, but the main link is this new website, also launched in the last 2 months. The switch is on. It's by the Building Decarbonization Organization, and the Switch is On website is switcheson.org/incentives. And if you go here and type in your zip code, in this case, I typed in the zip code of a city in Marin, it'll pop up with the customized rebates available to those citizens in that zip code. In this case, you can see that Bayron has some money, Tech has some money, and the county of Marin has some money. And if you add up all those monies there, that Marin citizens can get, up to $5,100 towards that $4,000 to $6,000 purchase. So low-income Marin residents probably can get close to a free heat pump water heater through these incentives simply by going to this website, typing in their zip code, and finding out how to get the ball rolling. And that website will also pull up other rebates like the panel rebates, like even heat pump and things we don't, heat pump air conditioning, which we don't have time to talk about. But so this is a great new site. I'll be dropping this in the chat, but Switches On is an excellent resource. So let's close by talking about how you find an installer to do all this. And I want to just bring up the example of a friend of mine, the Yang family of 4 in Burlingame, who called me last year to ask advice how to get going. And the hardest part for them was to find the right contractor, because of the ones they called, many plumbers were trying to convince them, oh, don't do the heat pump, that's expensive, it's so slow, it doesn't work, blah blah blah. Of course, they don't have all the right information. They sort of are biased to try to just sell you more gas. So it's important to really find the right contractor who's willing to do the heat pump version for you. This family had a 50-gallon gas unit that failed last May. They actually went 12 days with no hot water, had to go to some friends' houses to shower during that time as they hustled to find a contractor and figure out what to do. They eventually found a plumber who recommended this Bradford White 65-gallon heat pump, which is shown in the picture on the right. After it was installed, as you can see, it was in their garage, perfect, like we talked about. They had to add the 240-volt wiring, which wasn't available. That's what took a few days, and they did the electrical permit. But in the end of the day, they said it was a seamless transition over to electric. We can't tell the difference. We have plenty of hot water for our showers. So they're very happy that they did the transition right. So I think my advice to everybody on this call is that if your water heater is over 10 years old, don't wait for it to leak. You could proactively upgrade to a heat pump water heater, especially now that all these incentives are in place. Unfortunately, the Yang family did it right before those big incentives came out, so they're not going to get as good a deal as those of you on the call who could be taking advantage of it. And so to find a contractor who is eligible for all those rebates, you pretty much, a good place to start is through bayron.org, find-contractor. We'll again do like a zip code list of you to find the ones nearby you, and you can quiz them and make sure that they're getting you the maximum amount of rebates. So let me pause with that, and thank you very much. And we'll take questions, and I'll put some things in the chat so that you can all get your free or almost free heat pump water heaters. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So with that, we are actually going to take questions. So I would invite the audience here now to click on under reactions to you can raise your hand through there. Let me go to gallery view to see if people want to physically raise their hand. But either way, we're here. Dan, James, and myself are here to answer any questions you have on the topics we've discussed today. Who's going to be brave to ask the first question? Tom Piazza. All right.
I'm just wondering on how many amp service do you need? We have an older house that has 100 amp service. If and it does have an old box, old fuses and stuff, so it would probably have to be upgraded. But would you need more than 100 amps?
So that relates to the last presentation, which is on heat pumps, right? And the answer to that is that the requirement for new home construction is a 200 amp service. And so, as you said, the homes of the past had 50 to 100. And so it gets pretty tight with all our new TVs, computers, and electric vehicles, and now heat pumps. So if you are thinking to stay there for a bit and to really go with the whole electric revolution and change out your air conditioning, your cooktops, and so forth, then it probably makes sense to consider upgrading your service from 100 to 200 amps at that cost of $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. It all depends. But you could see that there's a $2,800 incentive to help you with that transition. So I think my answer would be, it's worth thinking about doing the full upgrade, but if you only want to do like one thing, your electrician might be able to figure a way to fit everything into 100 amps.
Oh, we also have an electric vehicle, so
yes.
So, but we just put it on the 8 amp, the slow charging, which is enough for us because we don't go that far.
Yeah. So good question. Excellent question. Thank you, the Piazza family. Let's go to the next question, Jackie Garcia.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Well, the first one, since I want to tie into that, is Saul Griffith with Rewiring America was saying that there's some kind of amp sharing switches so that you might not have to increase your amps for that. I don't know. Like, I know that when our electric car charges, my stove flashes. Like, there's some kind of amp sharing going on. But so that's one, is the amp sharing. And then the other question is for Dan, because I love the idea of signs, because we know that peer pressure and knowing what your neighbors do really gets people to change behavior, which is why PG&E and East Bay Mud tell you how much water or electricity you use compared to your efficient neighbors. So I'm wondering if there's campaign material for that to start a movement. So two things.
Yeah, and thank you for that. We did make the signs, at a size that I feel is not obnoxious. We're not trying to do shameless marketing. There are QR codes on the signs that lead to a page on our website that is very comprehensive. And first it starts with impacts, and then what solutions you can do, covers best practices, and then has links to those resources. There have been communities who have basically started their campaign around these signs, and we've even co-branded with some of the nonprofits who have done larger engagements with these signs. So that's something definitely we can send you. If you want, I can put the email in the chat box, and then we can send you what that looks like and examples of that.
I have some information about the amp sharing. There are some companies that make a switch that you can install on a 240 volt outlet. And the way they work, you can plug several devices that draw from that. And one of those devices will be designated as the primary. So when it's running, there's no juice going to the other switch. And when that device shuts off, it allows the other device to get current. So there are people who use these to double duty, a 240 volt outlet, for example, in a garage that might have a car charger and an electric dryer. I looked into that when we moved to our old house here in Pacific Grove, and I solved the problem by getting a heat pump washer and dryer setup that uses 120. So I didn't have to buy the switch, and I used the 240 outlet that was designated for a dryer originally to charge my car. But yeah, there are some switches like that.
Great. And James, I also, thanks for sharing that. I put in a link in the chat to a pocket guide to home electrification, which also features an explanation of those switchers and links to the companies that make them. Let's go with Margot. Hi, Margot.
Hi, my question is for you, Wei-Tai. We are going to be replacing our water heater very soon. We're going to take advantage of all of the incentives you talked about. But then we're also thinking about electrifying completely. So I guess my question is, with your experience and with talking with other people, is it better just to, and I know the answer is going to be, it depends, but is it better to do things project by project, or do you think just all in one fell swoop? Like what are we getting ourselves into?
Well, that's a great question. I happened to do it myself 2 years ago in all one fell swoop. I did 4 things all at once, and it actually only took me 45 days to get rid of my HVAC, water heater, cooktop, and electric fireplace. So it doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take money and resource and just managing all that. And to Tom's question earlier about your panel upgrade, I didn't have to do that. I already had a 200 amp panel, but I do think if you've got an older home with a smaller panel, that you definitely want to be, if you're going to do all the steps anyways, you have to do a little bit of strategic planning up front with your panel. And then after you do that thinking, you can decide, do I want to bite off all the steps now, or do I just want to chunk the one by one? Because otherwise you might end up with what James is talking about. You buy a switcher, but then you really didn't need it because you were going to upgrade your panel anyways. And so I think it's really the panel that probably decides. If you're a 200 amp now, you could probably just step by step. But if you have to upgrade that, you need to do a little strategic thinking. Okay. And that pocket guide that I put in the link is actually a pretty good resource to explain how all of those things work.
Great. Thank you very much.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
All right, let's see. Marty Roach. Hi, Marty.
Hi, I just wanted to, I hope you can hear me okay. My internet's a little bad, but this is wonderful. Again, related to the heat pump water heater and electrifying the whole house. I've recently got some bids on water heater and heat pump, heating and cooling. And it was to see what the size of what it was really going to cost, so we could start to do some longer range planning about how to accomplish it. But the other news is that every contractor I talked to, which was Bay Run referred, which means they're eligible for the rebates, was 4 to 6 months out for being able to do the work. And I don't know, Wei-Tai, if you have any thoughts on that. I mean, this is an example. This is an example of one of the obstacles we're facing now as demand is starting to go up. The product itself, sometimes some of these heat pump water heaters aren't available in stock, the ones people want. So there's supply chain issues there. And then we have contractor issues. So can you enlighten us at all as to what you're hearing about those obstacles?
Yes, so Marty mentioned a very important practical problem with all the supply chain issues we're having now. That Rheem heat pump I showed you was, it's been sold out for like 4 or 6 months. And my own Sandon that I showed you, that's sold out for 6, there's a waiting list. They don't even know when they're going to arrive on the US shores. Yeah. So this is a problem like not just heat pumps, but just all of our material supplies. So that's for sure, Marty is correct. The second thing is the contractors are busy. Also, they're small shops, and suddenly the state of California is basically putting a $3,000 to $4,000 or $5,000 in rebates for a $4,000 to $5,000 process. So, everybody who really gets a hint of this should actually be running out there demanding this of a very limited number of contractors. So that there are really not enough trained contractors out there either. So both of those mean that those of you interested in this will have to be persistent and patient, but just keep following up, and hopefully, you'll be all setting examples for others, but it will take some time.
Thanks, Wei-Tai.
Good question. Let's go to Allison.
Hi, Wei-Tai and Jim. Jim, do you have any suggestions about how to find out about rebates, sort of where to begin with the electric car or hybrid electric.
Sure. The federal rebate, you just have to have documentation of your purchase of the vehicle, and you submit that with your tax return. So your tax preparer would actually build that right into your tax return. The state return, they also require documentation of your purchase of your vehicle, which you'll get when you buy a vehicle. And you can register it online. Takes a few months for that to get turned around, for them to send you the check. And the same procedure here where I live in Monterey County, worked with our local community choice aggregator, Central Coast Community Energy. I submitted my documentation of purchase, and 2 weeks later, I had a $2,000 check in my hand. So it's pretty straightforward. You just have to have proof of your vehicle purchase.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to, there are some questions in the chat, but I'd like Dan to jump in here because I know that there are a number of individuals who live in my town of Lafayette, which is considering a leaf blower, gas leaf blower ban. And as I've read about this and many other cities that are taking this up, I wonder if you have any advice for many of the policy activists here who might be petitioning their city councils for a similar thing. What nuances do we need to know about, or are there any cities that you would hold up as having done a very thoughtful? Because I think your message to us was that you're not just trying to get rid of gas, but you'd want to do it thoughtfully. And I think there's a lot of nuance to your message to us. So what cities have done, a great model ordinance that we could follow their lead?
Yeah, thank you for that, Wei-Tai. Definitely, well, South Pasadena, they set the example themselves. They converted their hired contractor and their public works departments, and they didn't just convert, they did it under our independent certifications, so it's real and measured. And then we go back and we conduct workshops for the private companies that operate within their city. They finally got around to a gas leaf blower ban. They gave a 1-year grace period. And in that 1-year grace period, again, we come in, we conduct the workshops, we bring the equipment out, and we let the gardening community try before they buy. We're very forthright with them and let them know that this electric one, it's great, but it's not going to do what your gas is going to do. We break down the cost benefit analysis for them, the ROI trajectories, and we lead them to any existing programs that might exist to defray or bring down the cost of the electric equipment. I would say definitely that is the ideal model, is set the example first, provide not just incentives to buy down the equipment, but also provide adequate workforce, basic workforce training to help them convert so they will endure with their electric fleets.
Great advice. I saw that Washington, D.C. also passed such an ordinance for all electric lawn equipment as well. But
yeah, the DC is completely void of workforce engagement, anything. We would not, well, AGSA would not recommend that model. We would recommend another model, Larchmont, New York. They just established their AGSA certified green zone. We worked with their vendor. They converted nearly the entire village, and now we're going back in March to start to conduct workshops for the private operators within their areas. So those are the models that we would recommend. Sometimes you can pass bans and ordinances, and they're almost impossible to enforce. A lot of the gas crews will build in 4 to 5 fines into their business model, pass along the costs over to their clients. So again, I want to stress there's a lot of complexities to the industry. There's no easy answers, but everyone has the right to reasonable peace and quiet and pollution-free areas, no doubt about it. But it just depends on how you want to get there.
Yeah, that peace and quiet, I think, as you pointed out on your website, as more and more people are aware of that due to COVID now and working at home, right?
We have been slammed since COVID started. I can't tell you how busy we've become. It's just been almost overwhelming, but we are here to help everybody. We always get to every email, every phone call, and we try to find some pathway or solution that fits their situation best.
Okay, awesome. Well, let me check with my host, Brenna. Are we have enough time to do one or two more questions? Are you going to need, we're going to end promptly at 5:30. But I see Kevin Shader, is Kevin, asked a question here about, besides using natural gas, how do the electric heat pump water heaters compare to tankless gas water heaters? And that's a very common question people are asking, because the tankless water heaters are being promoted to save water, right? Given the drought in California, those have come up as a topic of discussion. And again, the plumbers who like gas and tend to work with gas tend to push that. And they're not good tankless electric options. The tankless electric don't heat it fast enough to take a shower. But I think that these still use gas. And so really the tanked versions, the ones with heat pumps with tanks, are really the solution if you want to go to an all electric path. There's not the electric tankless available. And the quick answer to Jackie Garcia's questions about income requirements to get the incentives is that the $3,100 to $3,800 tech incentive is available to everybody, irregardless of income. So everybody should be able to get at least $3,100 for a 55-gallon or less, and $3,800 for a 55-gallon or more. But if you are income qualified, some counties and cities can get $1,000 or more on top of that as an additional incentive. All right. So I don't see any other questions in the chat that came up. Let's see, unless people want to raise their hands. I haven't been able to see that, but otherwise, let me turn it back over to Brenna. I think she had just an announcement on solar to wrap us up.
Yes, first I just want to thank our speakers once again, Wei-Tai, Dan, and James. It's been so informative, and we really appreciate
and Dan in Southern California.
Yes, and Dan too. So we have one more thing as we're talking about electrification. There is currently the utilities are trying to put an extra charge for solar customers. And 350 thinks this is a bad idea. There are over 600 different climate groups that are lobbying against this. And if this sounds like a bad idea to you, I hope you will sign the petition that's just been put in the chat. We really need solar to be affordable so that it can continue to grow. It's not on every rooftop yet. So we're hoping to make sure that this extra charge doesn't go through. Thanks everybody for coming today. I hope you learned something, and I hope it seems doable. Thank you.
Thank you, 350, Contra Costa, James, Daniel,
Thank you so
Brenna.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was
Bye,
super
everybody.
interesting. Really
Bye.
great.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Good night.